This podcast is brought to you by NVIDIA and the new GeForce GTX 580 GPU. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 134 for December 16th, 2010. I'm Ryan Trout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm Josh Walrath.
We're going to walk you through, the last 7 days or so of PC technology hardware. We've got not a whole lot of hard news to talk about. We did have one graphics card release we will get into. Just top of the order here. Let's start with if you want to send us an email, the address is podcast@pcper.com. You can call 1-888-38-PCPER for toll free. Leave us a voicemail. And despite what it says, there's a little introduction from me you'll get to hear, or if you ever miss my voice, you can just call that number. After that, there's a stock lady that comes with a phone service that says, please leave your name and number. We don't really need you to leave your name or phone number in the message. Not only do we get caller ID results, but then we just have to edit that out before we play it back in the show, and it's just a lot of hassle.
But you do need to tell us where to leave your papers.
Yes, that is a requirement. I did get an email from somebody who won one of the ECS motherboards a couple of weeks ago who apparently didn't get anything back from me. I apologize. I just now got his second email. Apparently missed the first. So we'll get those prizes shipped out. Twitter.com/PCPer if you want to follow the site. Twitter or PCPer.com/podcast is obviously where you downloaded this very episode, but make sure you share it with your friends for the holiday season. There's no greater gift than the gift of technology, information, and Josh Walrath.
I'm sure you can find other gifts far better and less expensive than me.
I don't know about less expensive. I don't know about less expensive, but definitely better. Let's go ahead and jump into the first article we're going to talk about. This is the release of the Radeon HD 6900 series of cards, and I guess not really.
Do we have to talk about this old tech again? Because these constant rehashings and renamings of chips, it's just gone too far with AMD because they've had this chip for 3 years and they just keep renaming it.
This time it's different, Josh.
Damn it! I knew I was messing up here.
It was a good setup. So the Radeon HD 6970 and 6950, these are based on the Cayman architecture. It is slightly different than, it's not a rehash. It is different, but it's not, I don't want to say it's super dramatically different. Josh, the difference, the primary difference here is in the core shader architecture itself, where it's now VLIW4 instead of a VLIW5 technology, which sounds kind of like a degradation in technology because now it's a 4-wide SIMD machine instead of a 5-wide SIMD machine. But there are complications with the 5 that are now simplified in the 4-wide engine that kind of makes it easier to feed data to more reliably. Is that right?
Well, pretty much, yeah. Why AMD went to the VLIW5 is because of the DirectX 9 Vertex shader type operations that they really kind of used that 5-wide type architecture really, really well, and it didn't do too badly on pixel shader type applications. But that was in DX9, and they've changed things up obviously with DX10 and DX11. And it's not as effective. I think that AMD was looking at it, and they came to the conclusion that these parts were, out of these 5 units, 3.6 were being used, on average at any one time. And so you had a lot of wasted die space for this type of functionality. The VLIW5 had 1 T unit that was able to do transcendentals, I believe, and the other 4 were not. And so AMD decided, hey, let's kind of cut out that T unit and spread the transcendental load against these other 4 remaining units. And so I believe from what I've read, it can do transcendentals at the same rate as the previous, but you also have a higher usage of the 4 shader cores that are still there. Now, NVIDIA, on the other hand, has a truly scalar type shader in that I can't remember who had the best thing, but it's like AMD was able to do threads, and they'd have like 4 instructions here, and then 2 instructions here, and then 3 here, and so they would kind of like go down in terms of Tetris. I guess that's the best visualization you could do, and it worked well, but it didn't always have the best utilization because some of those instructions needed some of the returns from some of the previous instructions, and they had to wait. Now, NVIDIA has it another way in that it's basically kind of a straight line of all the threads and all the instructions, and then it just quickly pops through them. So you get nearly 100% utilization on NVIDIA's architecture at all times, but it also takes up a lot more space.
And that kind of explains why we have shader counts about 1,600, quote, shader processors, like 1,600 of them on the top end. I guess these are now actually 1536 or something odd like that. And then with NVIDIA, we now top out at 512. So that kind of explains those differences in computing strategies and why AMD needs more shaders in order to keep up with and have similar performance levels of some of the NVIDIA GF110 parts. AMD basically approached this as, the 6800 series is basically the 5800 series with a couple of tweaks, improved tessellation performance, but not dramatically so. The 6900, their goal was efficient graphics, right? They wanted to improve specifically performance per area. So get more performance out of a smaller die or more performance out of the same size die without increasing die size because they are the same process technology. They wanted to improve their geometry performance and introduce some new image quality features and that kind of stuff along the way. Now, they improved geometry performance basically by doubling up the graphics setup engines. So while NVIDIA's tessellation performance is more distributed around it kind of scales with the number of shaders, CUDA cores that are in their architecture, the AMD design is much of a single fixed unit in the graphics setup engine. So what they did was they basically doubled it. So now they have a dual graphics engine at the top. So you've got dual rasterizers, tessellation units, Z-units, assemblers, vertex assemblers, those types of things that share a crossbar and share data that way. So there is a performance improvement in tessellation, which I think we would all admit is kind of like the one area where NVIDIA's Fermi architecture dominated in terms of DX11 performance. Was if you looked at pure tessellation benchmarks, like even the Unigine Heaven benchmark, those were far and away shined a brighter light on NVIDIA's cards than on AMD cards. They were trying to address some of that. They did some other tweaks. They added support for, this is something you liked actually a lot, Josh. This is the enhanced quality AA as well that allows coverage samples in addition to multi-sampling AA with very little to any performance in.
Yeah, well, NVIDIA released this back in the G80 days with the 8800 GTX and all of its follow-throughs, and this was an AA method that I used extensively in whatever gaming I had time at the time to do. Doesn't happen anymore, but anyway, it was a fabulous, fabulous thing. You could have 4 color samples and then 12 coverage samples, so you would have this 16 sample architecture, and I mean it did great things to anti-aliasing in terms of the edges, and it was done at very little cost. So I was very excited to see that AMD finally was able to implement something of their own along this measure.
Probably the most interesting, it shouldn't really affect end consumers that much, but probably the most interesting addition to the technology that I thought with this round of updates was PowerTune. And this is kind of an interesting game that both NVIDIA and AMD are now playing with certain applications and benchmarks and things. The idea behind PowerTune is that it is an algorithmic, real-time method for the 6900 series of graphics cards to monitor and enforce a TDP by using clock frequencies and voltages. And the reason they want to do this is because there are some applications, Furmark, which is often used by people in the benchmarking and computer hardware community to like stress test an overclock or stress test a cooling solution for a graphics card. You run Furmark on it for a while. Gets the GPU really, really hot. NVIDIA and AMD have gone as far to call these types of applications like Furmark, ironically the 3D Mark 03 Game Test 4, the Perlin noise test on 3D Mark Vantage, and something called OCCT SC8, which I forgot what that was now. But AMD's CTO called these applications like a virus to GPUs because they do more processing than any modern game can do or does do, and it draws more current than any real-world application can. And they have some examples here. With an unconstrained card, Crysis might pull 130 watts of power from said theoretical GPU, while Furmark pulls closer to 170, and this OCCT application pulls closer to 200. So they are using more of the GPU and stressing it in ways that maybe that AMD doesn't think consumers will actually do. So what they're going to do now is have power tune that monitors and constrains what they are calling, outlier applications like this. And the idea is that once, if they decide, like for example, on the 6970, the maximum TDP is 250 watts on this card, and they say the theoretical or the typical gaming power is 200 watts, I think. So what that means is, once they calculate that this graphics card is at 250 watts of power draw, they will downclock the core on it so it meets that 250 mark or below. And what you'll see is, if you look at our review, there's some examples of when this happens, and what you see is things like the GPU core clock, like scaling between anywhere from 780 megahertz down to, 680 megahertz, depending on, how much power. In this example, they were using the 3D Mark Vantage Perlin noise test. More interesting so that kind of worried me when I first saw this information, and I know Josh and I kind of talked about this and why they might be doing it and what effects this will have. Now, they say that this won't happen with games, that they haven't run into a case yet where a standard game running at maximum image quality settings with all the anti-aliasing and options and stuff turned on exceeds what they call their maximum TDP. So you won't get any of this GPU clock frequency scaling in that case. So what this allows them to do essentially is set the standard default clock rates higher on these graphics cards. For example, on the 6970, the reference clock speed is 880 megahertz. Now, because they no longer have to worry about applications like Furmark stressing the GPU to a certain level, they can keep the frequency high because they know games like, Metro 2033, Lost Planet 2 aren't going to exceed that 250 watt maximum level, even with everything turned on. But Furmark would. But now they have the ability to control those outlier applications. Now, my worry on this is that there are going to be instances where games or GPU-based computing applications or something like that are going to hit this limit. Maybe without AMD knowing it, maybe without the consumer knowing it, and we're going to see people not getting the full benefit out of their GPU. Josh, is that a realistic fear, or is it something that we'll probably never have to deal with?
It's really hard to say. It depends on the developer, but I would say that it's a fear that has very little place in actuality.
Okay.
We have applications that still require CPUs, and I think these developers certainly they could create a application like FurMark or whatever and just hammer it. But what's the point?
Right.
I mean, they're trying to get some actual design issues down and figure out how they want to create their game. And yeah, you can do corner cases where you can exploit that. But what's the point? And plus, we have so many developers that actually still develop for Xbox 360, PS3.
Right.
Even the really hardcore. I mean, Crysis Warhead. It sometimes, I guess, it can cause the power saving to go, but it only goes down from like 880 megahertz to 800, and that's just for a few seconds at certain times, and it doesn't affect the frame rate whatsoever. So, I would say it's. You're going to load up Quake 15 and run it, and next thing you know, your card's running at 10 megahertz because it's just hammering it so hard. That's just not going to happen. I mean, the FurMark is one of the worst, no CCT, and I think they go down to like 600 megahertz on the core, and you're just not going to see that in any kind of real-world gameplay. I mean, even if they do lots of physics, lots of other GPU effects and pixel shaders and tessellation, each of those operations utilize a different part of the core, and so you're not going to have all this stuff just banging away at once. You're going to have some state changes. You're going to have all kinds of other things going on, and so you're not going to get like 100% utilization of the core to be able to enable that. So I don't think it's really much of a problem going forward.
And
do you think
did
that part of it might just be that they're skirting the limits of the PCI Express wattage maximum? Like, I mean, these cards are pulling significant amounts of power, and I mean, sure, they are getting 12 volt out of the direct connection to the power supply, but I mean, you'd think that they're getting rather close to the PCI Express limit.
I think that's 300 watts is the
as far
limit.
as I know it is.
Yeah. That's for a pair of 8-pin connectors and the power coming through the bus. They did this was when we first saw numbers for the 6970 card, the power rating was labeled as less than 300. They didn't have a specific number for the maximum TDP. This allowed them to not have to put that 300 or 290 watt number on their spec sheet. In preparation for people running FurMark or running OCCT and those types of applications. Now they could set it at 250, which seems much lower, and in reality is much closer to what the maximum TDP will be in gaming. While not scaring away maybe potential OEMs or card vendors or heatsink makers and that kind of stuff. So I think there are benefits to it. And even if consumers don't like it, if they're worried about it, if they want to make sure that their GPU is not constrained, there is a new option in the control panel, the Catalyst Control Center, where there's now where the overdrive settings are, where you could overclock your machine, there's a power slider. And you can actually slide it between 20% above and 20% below. And you are adjusting the maximum power draw of that card. So you can go 20% higher than whatever the maximum of your card is. So potentially, we're talking 300 watts, right? 20% of 250 is 50, so you're up to 300 watts. So you can do that if you want. You can also lower it by 20% and see how much performance you still are able to get out of your system while running at a lower power draw. Now, to prove that there is a difference, they ran some tests with the Perlin noise, which is one of those outlier applications again. And with default power settings, they got 140 frames per second. When they added 5% power, they got 155 frames a second. When they added 10% power, they got 162 frames per second. So there was scaling. And at plus 10% power, the GPU core clock speed stayed at 800 megahertz, and there were no issues. Obviously, these tests were done on a 6950. So there is that option out there if you want to do that. And we did some testing internally with the 6970 and 6950 where we pushed it up 10% and reran some benchmarks. Metro 2033, Lost Planet 2, Bad Company 2, and we saw pretty much 0%, 1% maybe performance difference, which could be margin of error, not even necessarily applicable to the power change in our gaming at 1920 or 2560 by 1600. So I think the result today is that this doesn't affect gamers. It affects people that want to run FurMark and that stuff for whatever reason, for power testing, stress testing, temperature testing, and that type of thing. It's not going to affect people that actually want to buy these cards and play games with it. Real quick, the two cards are the 6970, 6950. One, the high-end card has 1,536 ALUs, stream processors, 96 texture units. Both of them have 2 gigs of memory now by default, which is nice. 5.5 gigabit per second speeds, so pretty high up there. The 6950 runs at 800 megahertz, has 1408 shader processors. So again, these are odd numbers, but we know that what the running scale is here. And I guess what's interesting is the 6970 has 1536 shaders. The 5870, last generation's high-end single GPU, had 1600 shader processors. So we actually have one SIMD fewer, I guess. We have 64 fewer shader processors, however the math works out. Yet the 6970 is still faster in our gaming tests thanks to improvements in the core architecture, better tessellation performance, and that type of stuff. I'm not going to go through the benchmarks step by step because there are a lot of pages of benchmarks. 6970 compared pretty favorably to the GeForce GTX 570, and was beat by the 580, but competed with it on a couple of instances, surprisingly Metro 2033 being one of them. And considering that the retail price on the 6970 is $369, and if you can find a GTX 580, it's over $500, usually like $510 or $520. That's pretty good. So the 6970 performed pretty well against its competition. Same thing with the 6950. Only the 6950 is going to be priced at $299. And there is no direct competition to it. For $50 less, you can get the GTX 470, and for $50 more, you get the GTX 570. And the performance in that on this card pretty much falls right in between those, a little bit leaning towards the 570 there as well. So both of the 6900 cards do very well in terms of performance compared to their GeForce brethren, as well as the previous generation 5870, 5850 cards. What I found kind of interesting here is that with these performance gains and the architecture change, it looks like the advantage in performance per watt that AMD used to have with the 5870 is kind of gone now. The 6970 draws 372 watts. This is the whole system, not just that card. 372 watts versus the 570 at 375 watts. So pretty much the same there. The 6950 did much better, pulling about 80 watts less than the GTX 470. So the 6950 seems to be the much better solution for performance per watt. 6970 looks like, they're stressing that TDP. I mean, the maximum TDP goes from 200 to 250 watts on the 6970 card. So that's pretty dramatic, and we're seeing that in our power results. So it looks like part of the story here might be that, Josh, we talked last week about the fact that GPU process technology had some issues, right? TSMC, 32 nanometer, all that kind of stuff. And the 6970, 6950 were originally supposed to be built on a 32 nanometer process, and they didn't get that. So this is kind of how they had to make do until we get there. And I think we're seeing some of the results of that.
It's a much larger die than they wanted for this generation, and they chopped a bunch of features out of it to get it to where it is. But still, it seems like it's a nice improvement for AMD in quite a few ways. And some things that we haven't really talked about is that it's got UVD3. The die size is still 3/4 the size of the GF110 from NVIDIA. Right. And one of the other areas that I think that they're going to really start pushing, especially when the Firestream versions of this card comes in, it's supposed to be a lot better at GPU and has a couple of features that NVIDIA doesn't even have. So we'll see really how it compares, and I'm very curious when they will get like a folding at home client that will utilize the power of this card.
All right. Check out more details on the review. We talked about this graphics card's way too long. Let's go ahead and get to the first of today's sponsors before we talk a little bit about, AMD again, a couple of laptops, and some other emails and voicemails and news items. This episode of the PC Perspective Podcast is brought to you by Audible.com, the Internet's leading provider of audiobooks. For listeners of this very podcast, just this podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try out the service. We were looking for book suggestions. We were talking amongst ourselves before the show. A couple of them came up. The first one, I was going to go with the Stephen King book, kind of typical, kind of boring. Josh then pointed me to a novel called Pushing Ice. I've never read anything or listened to anything by Alastair Reynolds. Has anybody else, do you know of this author?
Yeah, but I haven't read that particular book, so you probably want to ask Josh.
Well, this is pretty new. It only came out in November. It takes place in the year 2057. Humanity has raised, exploiting the solar system to an art form. Bella Lind and the crew of her nuclear-powered ship, the Rockhopper. Nuclear-powered ship, the Rockhopper, push ice. They mine comets, and they're good at it.
You know, this is a really hardcore science fiction. I mean, we don't talk about warp engines. We don't talk about transporters. I mean, we live in a world of actual physics and things that are theoretically possible in our universe right now. And so this is actually a really, really fascinating story that not only is on the personal side, but also goes into, more universal type questions about are we alone out there, and something that I think a lot of people really don't consider is that we may not be alone out there, but are these other civilizations and whatever in the same kind of time frame as we are? And so this is something that really explores that, and it's a fascinating book. Decent character development, but some of the overarching ideas are I mean, if you are more of a science related and someone who has studied any kind of physics or something is a little bit more interested in real world technology and kind of philosophical conversations around that technology, this is a fascinating book to read. So there you have it, Cliff Notes by Josh.
Not only that, it is a lengthy title, 20 hours and 10 minutes. So if you're looking for something to keep you busy while you're running, while you're driving, while you're commuting, audiobooks are a great way to pass that time. They're a great way to learn and be educated on the future of our society in the year 2057, even when you can't read a book, and Audible is the best at that anywhere. So again, go to audiblepodcast.com/PC. audiblepodcast.com/PC. Get the free audiobook, completely free. You get to keep it even if you decide not to keep the service. And we thank them for their support of the PC Perspective Podcast. Now on to more AMD news, apparently. They did more than just release a new graphics card. They also released an updated, we'll call it a preview driver of Catalyst 10.12. And why is this exciting? Well, it's not super duper exciting, but it is a completely new control panel user interface. It's kind of brought out of the era of 2005 and brought into the era of 2010, hopefully 2011 since we're so close to it. Not much really to say here. The same type of functionality is there. You get benefits of breadcrumbs, and it's much easier to go between menus, even if you're an average type consumer. You have the ability to pin things to a bar on the side, which if you're frequently going in to change your anti-aliasing settings, you don't have to click through several things to get to it, right? There's a pin right there.
Because Jeremy is all for pinning things to the bars.
Pinning it left and right and center, because, the bar, it needs pins.
Or things need to be pinned to the bar. Namely his friends, to at least stay with him while he drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd run away.
For that. There are presets, so you can actually set a preset that will affect every possible setting in the control panel that you can switch between via the start menu, via right-clicking on the icon in the lower right-hand corner of your desktop. So that it could adjust both your overclocking settings as well as your resolution, your anti-aliasing settings, really easily, one click. Very handy there as well. So, I mean, if you want to go see what this is, you can go look at the article at pcper.com. I think you can actually go to game.amd.com and download a preview of the driver today. and they're looking for feedback on it. They want to know what you guys think and what you like, what you don't like, and tell them to shove off. You want your old one back and all those good things. It's completely up to you. We also had a couple of other reviews by Matthew Smith. He did a couple of notebook reviews for us this week, the first of which is the Alienware M11X. This is kind of odd. It's an 11-inch Core i7-based gaming notebook. It's an 11-inch gaming notebook. It doesn't really sound right when you say it out loud, but it's got pretty impressive specs. Core i7 640 processor, up to 2.26 gigahertz, NVIDIA GT335M graphics with Optimus support, of course, 4 gigs of memory. Now, the resolution is 1366 by 768, so it's decent. You're getting 720p or better graphics support there. And not only that, it's actually a good mobile machine, right? So it's good at just being a laptop as well as apparently pretty decent at gaming. You gotta know what to expect when you're going into something like this. Don't expect desktop type quality gaming or performance or things like that. But you're gonna get a gaming laptop that maybe gets more than 45 minutes of battery life, which could be a plus. The other review he did is of the Lenovo T410S 14-inch Core i5 Optimus notebook. So 2 Optimus notebooks this week. The 410S actually has been getting a lot of good reviews throughout the web, and Matthew also really liked this unit. If you're kind of like a business user, if you beat up your laptops and stuff like I do, the benefits of a ThinkPad can be extreme. You know, you might be able to throw your laptop on the concrete, like literally 20 feet away from you, and throw it on the concrete and still be okay. I know from experience there. But another decent machine worth checking out the review. Again, just go to pcper.com. If you don't see them on the homepage, go over to the side, click on the mobile icon, and you will get both of those available to you. Side note, I tried to buy a Lenovo machine from outlet.lenovo.com. Really nice. I basically took this X200 and I wanted to upgrade to the newer processor, the Core i5, right before the new Sandy Bridge parts come out while things are cheap. You know, so I got a Core i5 with 4 gigs of memory, and I got a touchpad because I got tired of the little red nub on it. 9-cell battery, good for, 8 or 9 hours of battery life. Thought it was great, $850 or so, good price. I got it in today, was all excited, had to go to UPS and pick it up since I missed delivery. Opened it up, first thing I noticed, 6-cell battery. Okay, they screwed this up. Second thing I noticed, it doesn't have a touchpad. It doesn't have a touchpad. It also has 2 gigs of memory. So I don't know what they sent me, but keep in mind if you're going to order something from the outlet store, maybe don't expect to get what you order. It's like potluck. It's like a raffle. It's just like you never know what you're going to get.
You got the white elephant.
Order cheap and hope you get a good one.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. Before we get to our next sponsor, actually, let's see if we can get Burke, kind of as a surprise, to jump into our voicemails today. We've only got one, but it's a decent one. Unfortunately, it's an SSD one, and Alan's not here, but we'll still give it a shot. Let's go ahead and see what Elijah has to ask.
Hi, this is Elijah giving you a call from Salt Lake City, Utah. I had a couple of things for you guys. First off, love the show. Also, I was wondering, do you think the prices on the SSDs will drop on when the new 25-nanometer flash comes out with those Intel drives? Because I've been looking for deal sites, and I always seem to miss them. I've missed the crucial one twice now that I've been looking for it on the refurbs. So I was thinking I might just wait and see if they drop. You guys think that's a smart idea or not? And also I was wondering, Ryan, a long time ago on a show when you played the video game Doom music, that was really cool, and I was wondering if you could do that again sometime. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Wow, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think John Carmack and the RIAA will come down upon you like a ton of bricks or something, or maybe even a pre-beta rocket.
That's very interesting. That's very. I'm trying. I think actually, when I did that, it was actually the episode of the podcast where we played back some of the John Carmack interview.
I think so.
That I recorded. So that had to have been back in, well, okay, not that far. Maybe February 2008. It was a long time ago. I'll tell you what. I'll put in the request to Ken, who does our editing, for a little bit of Doom music for the introduction. And hopefully we won't get sued. The other part, do we think that there will be price drops? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like, yes, we should assume there will be price drops. If not because of flash memory and process technology changes, but just anytime you introduce a new product, that we expect these other products to come down in price. I guess the real question is, are we going to see the price per gigabyte come down? And I don't really know for sure. I feel like we have seen a pretty significant drop, probably 50% or so. If we looked at January 2010 to December 2010, we were probably in the $3 to $3.50 or above price per gigabyte for what we considered a high quality fast drive. And now, today, I mean, we're seeing them for $2, maybe a little bit less than $2 per gigabyte. Not just on sales, but on some normal price machines as well. And I think it doesn't seem like that's really dramatic because it's still expensive. But if you go back and look at how much a 256 gig SSD was going to cost you in January versus what it costs now, I think that's a pretty good progression. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, the original 80 gig Intel SSD was what, $270, $320? And now you can get a 90 gig for around 180, if even that.
Yeah. Actually, it looks like we might have Allyn to come on here in a second. He's popping around.
He promised that he wouldn't show up.
Promised you, or promised all of us?
I'm not going to tell you.
Well, let's see if we can get him in here in a second. While we try to get Allyn on, and he can finish to thank our second sponsor, Carbonite, the leader in online backup. We all know that unexpected computer disasters happen all the time, like Friday, and we're all at risk of losing important files. That's why you need Carbonite, safe, easy, and automatic backup for the files on your PC or Mac. And then when your inevitable computer disaster happens, you'll get back your photos, your music, and your other I can't afford to lose files with just a few clicks. This could even be source audio for videos that you spend hours and hours editing. Plus, with Carbonite, you can access your backed up files from any computer or even your iPhone or BlackBerry with a free application. Unlimited backup for your PC or Mac is just $55 a year. That's 15 cents a day. Go to Carbonite.com and enter offer code PC. You'll get a free 15-day trial, plus 2 free months with purchase. Back it up, get it back, Carbonite.com, offer code PC. And if you couldn't tell, intermixed there with my usual advertising, was a little personal experience where I was away, got a call, hey, Ryan, your computer at the office, it's making this really, really obnoxious, loud beeping sound. And I'm thinking, okay, there's two things. There's my Arika RAID card, and there's the motherboard. There's only two things that have those types of speakers on them. I'm fearful of both. It says the computer's still running, blah, blah, blah. I get back, it reboots, it does this wonderful check disk thing that we all know and love. And all of a sudden, 2 pretty important video projects we're working on have corrupted files. Audio is missing. We go to look for the audio files in the directory. There's 0 bytes. This is totally awesome news, except for that it's not. Had we had Carbonite backing up our system, we would have been able to restore these audio files, maybe even the project files, and saved us a lot of time. Tonight, after this podcast, I'm installing Carbonite on there and hoping to. We'll see how happy Carbonite is, because this is like a 800 gigabyte array that's going on right now on that system. So this says unlimited backup, and it's true. I have like 400 gigs on another computer. They might not be happy about it, but you can do it. You can do it. Carbonite.com/PC. Or no, wait, Carbonite.com offer code PC. So we thank them for their support as well. Allyn, are you there?
I am, or should be.
Good.
He is.
Now,
Allyn, you smell so nice tonight.
Well, What's
weird.
up?
The voicemail we just had was asking if he was kicking himself for missing some of the sales on refurb SSDs. Like we had those crucial ones that were $1 per gigabyte.
Yep.
But now he was wondering with the pending release of 25 nanometer, or is it 22? I don't know.
25.
Will
25.
prices come down? Should prices come down? And should he just wait until after CES to see if new products are announced and if prices will adjust?
Okay. Well, if we go off of the let's see, the tone of the room in January when I went to Utah and actually saw the 25 nanometer flash and memory in production and whatnot.
Right.
Every brief that had to do with any of that new tech, yeah, they were making it. Yeah, they were building up their supply of it so that they can just shift over to it completely. But basically, the idea was that there wasn't going to be this huge, price slash. All of a sudden, everything is half or a quarter of what it was because they have to get some kind of return on their investment, first of all, because this is like a big deal. They pour millions into the fab to shift over to 25 nanometer and all that stuff, so they got to get some kind of return on that. And so initially, the idea is that the price is going to be like roughly on par, maybe a little bit of a drop. But over time, what I expect to happen, and it just all depends on the volume of sales, I would imagine, and competition with Samsung and all the other flash makers. Yeah, those prices are going to come down. It's just a matter of sales. I think SSDs are almost to the point where that sort of tipping point where people are just going to assume that you should have one in your system. I think like enough people are realizing that, hey, this thing, wow, look at how much of a difference this is compared to a hard drive, and more and more laptops are coming with them, that sort of thing. So it's almost to this, for just the pendulum to just swing, and almost everybody start using them. Once you hit that, prices are going to start dropping pretty fast too. They're going to be just so much of a commodity. Yeah. So as far as this past holiday season, I don't think it's going to be like February or March. Everyone's going to be kicking themselves because SSDs dropped to a tenth of what they were before. I don't see that happening. It's going to take a year or two, easy. So yeah, it's even now. There's probably going to be some after Christmas sales just for SSDs because everyone's going to have bought their Christmas presents and they're going to still be trying to. You're going to have Newegg and other suppliers are going to have some overstock left from just product that didn't move that they sort of built up for the holiday season. So I suspect there's still going to be some after Christmas, New Year time, somewhere around there. There'll probably be some decently low prices where you could still jump on an opportunity to get something good. I know Newegg. What was it? Is that one still going on? Newegg had that the 120 gig Intel was like 166 after rebate, something like that.
Yeah, and it lasted for like a half a day.
Oh, well, yeah.
Everybody gang raped it.
Yeah, but what was the date range? Like the date range on that sale, I think, was supposed to go out to like a couple of days from now even. So if you keep an eye on them, if they do get another shipment in and they get some stock back, you might be able to jump and take opportunity of that. That was a crazy good price. $166. A little over $1.
This guy's already sad because he missed those deals. He wants to wait for the newer ones. So
we're just going to rub it in a little more.
There's probably going to be some. I wouldn't necessarily hold out just specifically for a 25 nanometer flash drive. You know what I mean? The price per gig is still, if you compare price per gig roughly on like 50 nanometer and then when it went to 34, like all these companies are constantly dropping even Samsung, even though when Samsung drops their process size on their flash memory, it's not that big a deal, right? They don't have big announcements like Intel does, and they don't have all this hoopla, but it does happen. And you don't see crazy price drops with them either. So, yeah, don't like hold out specifically for that. If you're going to hold out for something, hold out for like the next generation controller. Don't, the smaller process just happens to come with it for this next generation, but just, actually, there's really nothing wrong with the current stuff. It's pretty darn fast. The current Santa Floors and Intel, yeah, that's actually part of the reason I think the adoption for serial ATA6, even on SSDs, is not that big of a deal because it's almost like you're almost point of diminishing returns, right? I have 4 SSDs in a RAID that's able to peg the ICH10 controller easily, right? And that does like 600 or 700 meg per second throughput. But if I run my same system on a single SSD, single good one, it's about this, as far as the seat of the pants like kind of feel, it's the same.
Yeah.
The only time you see the difference is if you're moving some huge files to or from it, and even then you have to have something else that can accept it at that, much faster speed anyway to even get to the point where you're looking at your watch waiting for something. So
not even J Micron is a joke anymore. I mean, sure,
Yeah.
it's the slowest of the bunch, but it's not stuttering.
Well, actually, how about this? Jeremy or Josh, you've had some time toying around with that SSD. So how do you? What's your take on them?
Yeah, I like them a lot. The startup is incredibly fast. You launch anything that you put on that disk, Office, front page, Internet Explorer, just pops up.
Games, anything. Yeah.
Yeah. All my productivity apps I put on there. Games I have to take off because I've already got like 200 gigs of games on my other drive, so I'm not going to put that on a 120 gig SSD. But yeah.
All right. Let's move on to emails. Again, if you want to email us, podcast@pcper.com is the email address. I'm going to have Jeremy run here on our first one from Marcus because he is also from Canada.
And even in Vancouver. After
Is he stalking you? Does he want to?
I don't know yet. I don't see him, but you never know. Anyways, after reading both ours and others, specifically Kyle's at Hard OCP's review of the 6900 series, he noticed that when it came to real-world performance, almost all of these high-end cards seem to be fighting over who can have more anti-aliasing at 2560 by 1600. There was also a link to a November article out of Hardware Heaven that came to the conclusion the single 5770 can provide enough performance to run just about anything you want at a 1080p resolution with everything turned up, except Metro 2033, which wasn't on there, and there's probably a reason for that. After reading these, I've got to wonder if we see the slowdown of if we're going to see a slowdown of computer graphics innovations. We do have some big things on the horizon, like tessellation that is used in a meaningful way, and then we've got GPU for physics. But we've also got a big upcoming jump to 28 nanometer that will theoretically increase performance significantly. Maybe this is. By many, this is a good thing, seeing as how we can't keep relying on smaller process nodes like we have in the past. No, we are sort of running out at the bottom for what we can etch, but we're already, TSMC is taking orders for, 20 nanometer right now?
No, 28, but that's not going to be available until the end of 2011, if they're lucky.
But they're next gen after that. Are they jumping to 25?
It's going to be 22 nanometer, I believe.
Okay. So, there is still room at the bottom to get a little bit smaller, but yeah, it is a lot nowadays about balancing the performance, because if you're running a single monitor and you're running it like 1080p, which, it ain't the greatest for a single monitor, but it's not bad, then yeah, there's no point in picking these cards up. These cards come with support for multiple monitors. That is why they're so incredibly fast.
Yeah, suck it up and get more displays, man.
Yeah, otherwise, stick with the 5770.
If you game on one monitor, man, what a loser. You need to get 3 displays. Boom. That's NVIDIA's AMD's take, at least. The issue is, he's right on a lot of cases. 5770 might be a stretch today, but like if you get a 6870 or something like that, right, where you're talking something under $300, 250 or below range, for 1080p or 19 by 12, chances are you'll be able to play anything you want to play. So that's always good information to know. We're not. I'm not in the business of selling you a graphics card. None of us here are, but AMD and NVIDIA are. They would love to see 30-inch panels shrink to about $300. They don't care what the prices are.
120 megahertz 30-inch panels.
Yeah. They would love for these types of things to happen, and that's why I tend to give NVIDIA benefit of the doubt on a lot of things with physics and 3D vision and that type of deal, because they are if nothing else, trying to think of ways to differentiate PC gaming from standard consoles and just basic PC gaming. Obviously, with the intent of selling more GPUs, more expensive GPUs, but at least they're doing something. So, if you don't feel like the need to upgrade is there, then don't do it. I mean, save your money, buy an SSD, buy a processor, buy us lunch, whatever you want to spend the cash on. We're okay. I mean, look at Allyn. He needs lunch.
I don't know. The next generation, the stuff that's coming out this next year in terms of games, I mean, it's really going to stress a 5770 with any kind of, anti-aliasing. I mean, you're going to be lucky to be able to hit 1080p with 4xAA with a 5770. I mean,
right.
I can't remember the entire list that I saw that was coming out. I mean, things like Portal 2, it's probably not going to stress your graphics card out all that much, but you've got, Mass Effect 3, you've got Diablo 3, you've got a bunch of other things that they're really trying to push a lot of DX11 features out, and I think it's going to just hammer on whatever generation card you have. I mean, I think if I were to buy a card today and I wanted to get the absolute lowest price one, I would probably get a GTX 460 and just hope that helps me survive throughout the year at the resolution I want to play. Anymore 5770 is right around an HD 4870 in terms of performance. And when you look at some of the, even just the latest stuff, I mean, yeah, Metro 2033 is one of the really hardcore cases. But we've got a bunch of games coming up that is just going to hammer
stuff.
So.
I hope so. I really do. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what happened if that was me or you, but I hope you're right. I hope there are more exciting games. They're doing a lot more things because Metro 2033 is probably the best example of it so far. 3D Mark 11 came out, right, and that looks really good. It's still a synthetic benchmark. I'm not saying anything like that, and not to say you need to upgrade your card to get better 3D Mark 11 scores, but it gives you an idea of what you can get, what kind of performance numbers you're looking at. Check that out as well. If you want to try the free standard version. To do that. Let's see. We've got another email. I'm going to pass this one over to Josh because it has the number 69 in it.
Well, that's strange because as far as I'm concerned, anything with 69 has avoided me for the past decade.
And rightfully so.
Email from Shawn about the upcoming 6990. I wanted to send a quick message before your podcast to ask if you could speculate when discussing the new AMD 6900 series graphics cards about the 6990 model. I wanted to bring your attention to the Crossfire results and compare them to the power efficiency of these cards. It's not entirely possible for AMD to launch a dual 6950, 6970 card with 4 gigs of memory with harsher power tune settings. There seems to be a lot of space left on the card, since only one side of the card is populated with memory. I've also noticed that the Crossfire performance is significantly improved. I thought this was due to the fact the SPs were the same in VLIW4 than 5, allowing easier scaling. By the same note, I would expect better performance with future drivers, and AMD is not used to this format. Looking at the same settings, I look as though NVIDIA would have more issues with a dual GPU card. However, I do think they have an excellent proposition with the amount of features and options that cards have. With the exception of Eyefinity, I can't see why AMD cards, especially the 6970 versus the 570, should cost the same as NVIDIA's cards, even though they have the same performance. This is due to the issues of lacking game support, physics, and CUDA. I'm not entirely sure what he's asking, sort of.
So, well, I mean, he's basically saying look at the Crossfire performance of the 6950 or 6970 and talk about the feasibility of a 6990. Also, I will say, I did note in the first section where we talked about, but yes, the Crossfire scaling percentages with these two cards were notably higher than what we've seen in the 6800 series and the 5800 series, and much closer to what we've gotten out of NVIDIA's Fermi architecture, GF100 and GF110 based parts. Anywhere from 70 to 85% seems pretty good for the 6950 and 6970 compared to probably anywhere from 50 to 65%, which is what I feel like we were getting in the 5000 series. So either something in the software stack has changed dramatically, or something in the architecture does indeed make it easier for crossfire scaling, as he posits in the question. Now, if I look at power consumption, though, the Radeon 6950 Crossfire solution runs at 479 watts. If we compare that to the GTX 580, it runs 407 watts. So we're talking about 70 watts of additional power for two 6950s versus a single GTX 580, with performance far exceeding it, and the pair of 6950s, I mean. So that seems reasonable. That I would even think that they might even downclock the 800 megahertz core speed a little bit as well. The memory, maybe get that power to like the 450 range. Again, this is whole system, not just for the graphics card. And that's actually probably doable. And they've already said they're going to do it. 6990 is going to come out. It's going to be a dual GPU card. We just weren't told for sure if it was going to be based on Cayman, if it was going to be based on BARTs. So whether it's, the 1600 series or the 6900 series. I would guess the 6950, maybe a little bit lower clocked than that. It's going to pull a lot of power, yes. But again, when you're talking about a $500 or $600 graphics card, I don't know if it really matters.
And not only that, but we don't know what kind of yields and bins they're getting on these chips and cards. I mean, if they get some stuff that has a couple of SIMDs that aren't working, but it runs at lower, at a very low wattage at 750 megahertz, then they're pulling those chips off the line as much as they can to populate these dual GPU cards. So I mean, they can also do some stuff at TSMC that apparently they're using something like AMD's APM, which is the Advanced Process Management, where they can mix and match how they create these chips to either say, hey, let's have more leakage and a faster switching transistor versus less leakage, and it's going to be slower, but it's going to be a whole lot more power efficient. So these are things to consider what AMD is doing with TSMC.
Let's send the next email over to Jeremy.
So we're back to me again, are we?
Yeah. The next one, I went a little bit out of order here. The next one is specifically about hard drives, and I figure Allyn doesn't like it if we talk about hard drives without it. So,
well, Monte is hoping for a beast that's a little more rare than you might think it is. Hey guys, love the show. The best podcast out. I want a gaming laptop. I know I should get a desktop, but I want to sit on the couch. So, wireless keyboard and mouse and a really big TV. But anyway, earlier this year, there were some companies coming out with an external graphics card. Where are they? I was waiting to see if they performed any better and then figure out what to get. I've yet to hear any info on these. Did they drop it or what? And MSI is the one that comes to mind as showing
Asus
off.
had one too.
Yeah.
AMD demonstrated one at CES last year.
And these aren't just like little guys. They're displaying like Eyefinity and stuff on these little external cards. So you sort of thought, hey, this is pretty big. My little laptop, and I plug this in, and I plug it into the wall, and hey, I'm going crazy. My question's the same as his. Where are they?
It's crap. It's just it's all crap. It just doesn't work very well, right? So the AMD one had a proprietary interface that only showed up on one laptop that was only sold in Europe. That was a fail. The MSI one, the Asus one, was trying to use desktop graphics cards and connect through PC card, I believe.
PCI Express, yeah.
No, I think the MSI one went actually through PCI Express, but I think when the Asus one came out, the external PCI Express standard wasn't finalized yet. I'm not sure. But the MSI one I saw at Computex in June looked like it could have been the most complete package because it was PCI Express based. It only, they were realistic about what graphics cards it could support in terms of power consumption and that type of thing. But none of them ever came out. or none of them ever came out to the point where they wanted to send us one, which kind of tells me that they don't work well. If something works well, these companies want to promote it. They want to send us to it. They want to send it to us for review to talk to you about. They didn't. It means it's all crap. Right?
You got to wonder.
I think
that
they did studies, and they figured out the amount of people who would actually buy such a product is so small a percentage of all notebook users that it just wasn't worth their time and money to develop such a system.
The idea is so great for me to have this X201 4-pound notebook that gets 9 hours of battery life. But I get home and I plug it into the dock that has an external graphics solution that attaches to a PCI Express bus through a connection on the bottom of the laptop, just like your typical whatever card or base station type thing. And it's got monitors and keyboards and stuff plugged into it. And the processors in these laptops are pretty good, and GPUs are more important than CPUs, and I've got a gaming desktop. Nobody wants to do that, and I don't really know why, because notebooks, nobody wants to create open standards in notebooks. Every connection needs to be somewhat proprietary, so you can't use your ASUS base station with a Lenovo base station with an HP or Toshiba, and the loser is the consumer.
Yeah, and Optimus is a nice choice for power, but you're still lugging around the weight.
Right. That's the issue. The idea of the external stuff kind of means no weight, no complications or potential complications with battery life and that type of stuff. I don't know, Alan, were you going to say something about that?
Oh, I was just going to say it was definitely unobtainium, except for the fact that they just passed you their only sample in existence to walk across to the other pavilion at CES last year.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny. We're just walking down
who
this
was
thing.
the streaker behind you, Alan?
Oh, right.
That was me.
Yeah,
that was Ryan, actually. Ryan's.
Speaking of Alan, we have an email from Ed, and it involves the words hard drives, so it's for Alan.
All right, email from Ed. Hi, guys. I'm putting together a new system. I noticed I can get a drive carrier that holds two 2.5-inch drives in the same space as one 3.5-inch hot swap drive normally goes. Okay, I know what he's talking about. There's a 3.5-inch like floppy drive external, like front-facing size assembly that has two 2.5-inch little hot swap trays in it that you can get. All right, so his question is on performance. If the cache size is the same and the RPMs are the same and the interface is the same, is the performance the same? Well, here's the thing. If you're comparing spinning 2.5-inch discs to spinning 3.5-inch discs, the desktop size ones are faster. But that's pretty much across the board applicable. Usually because the desktop ones just have, the platter density will generally be higher. There's more disks. There's just so many reasons. Usually laptop drives, the 2.5-inch drives, are more tuned for lower power use, so their seek times won't be as fast because the drive just doesn't want to work as hard to move the head pack to where it needs to be. So seek times will be slower. Yeah. So performance is generally going to be lower. Now, the difference, though, is that if you get two laptop drives and you RAID them, there's a chance that you're probably going to be around the same speed or a little bit better than a single desktop drive. So if that's what he's going for, we're not really sure because he only gave us some of the details there. So he asked, or is there some other parameter to look at judging performance? Well, yeah, that'd be the seeks. That's the big one. And laptop drives are generally going to have slower seeks. I like the idea of putting a RAID where I can normally put only one drive. And P.S., I leave my system on all the time, so I don't care about boot time, but I do care about watts. Well, here's the thing. If you care about watts, yeah, laptop drive is good. I hate to say it, but for the cost of buying the two laptop drives and that assembly to have hot swap front bays, which you're probably never going to pull because your system's going to be running, right? So if you're looking to get performance out of them, you're going to do a RAID 0. If you do a RAID 0 and you pull either drive, you just blue screened your system and probably corrupted your RAID. So
that's not good.
Right, it's something it'll look nice. People will comment on it. Ooh, that's cool. You have a hot swap front bay thing, but it's not going to be very practical in practice. And Unless he plans on buying 2 additional drives and constantly swapping between one pair or the other pair, which I'm guessing he's not going to do, right, if his system's on all the time. So, honestly, find a cheap SSD. And don't do the Bay thing. If you don't believe me, get a hold of somebody that has an SSD in their system and just try it. And because if you're probably looking at the same price for an SSD large enough to do your OS. If you're worried about power and it being all the time, an SSD is going to sip power even compared to a laptop drive. And you only have one of them, and it'll probably perform better than 2 or even 4 2.5-inch drives, like spinning disks. So definitely consider that. But yeah, I mean, if you really die hard for the laptop drives, maybe he already has a couple of those drives lying around. If he does, and it's a matched pair, then sure, get the assembly for like $30 or however much it is, and feel free to dabble. But if you're looking to buy everything new, definitely consider the SSD route.
All right, we've got one more email. It comes from Alex. It's about dirty cases, and Josh is a dirty man, so we'll pass it over his way.
I don't have much hair to get into my fan filter, so I don't have this problem.
Yeah, we got children.
Well, that's true, and I got 2 dogs and 2 cats and a wife.
Oof, there you go.
Yeah, well,
Gunk.
Some people have all the luck.
Anyway.
I spent all morning today with a vacuum cleaner, pipe cleaners, Arctic Clean, Arctic Silver, coffee filters, a leaf blower, and KY jelly. Okay, nix out the leaf blower and KY jelly.
That's
and we're there. The latter are the cheapest lint-free paper towels you can find, or at least that I can find. I do this once a month to keep my CPU idle temp below 55C. Every time I do one of these deep cleans, my idle temp drops to about 35, as you would expect. But over a month, the inside of the case gets dirty. Dirty, dirty, dirty. The fans and the heat sinks clog. The system stability goes down the toilet, which is even more dirty. I'm already running at slight positive pressure. I have a newer, slightly higher CFM fan on intake than the exhaust. All fan ports are filtered to keep out the dirt. I have even tried stretching pantyhose, which is really dirty, over all the openings. To no avail. I vacuum the floor around the computer regularly. After about a year of this, I'm really freaking tired of it. Short of building a hermetically sealed, climate-controlled box around my tower, do you have any suggestions to keep dust out of my case?
I have one after yours.
You can go ahead and tell it, because I live in an absolute pit that has floating particles constantly, and somehow my computer case, it doesn't exactly stay clean, but we're low humidity, so dust never sticks to anything.
I mean, as long as it's not a frog or a desiccated mouse, you're probably okay.
You want the case to be as high off the floor as you can possibly get it.
So put it on top of another case?
So put it on top of... No, I've got like... my case sits like vertically. It's even higher than my 30-inch monitor over here. But the higher you can get it, honestly, it's a huge difference. Even if you can get it like a foot off the floor, it is a huge difference in dust and anything that's on there. As a matter of fact, I do a lot of car work, so I have like an air compressor, and I used to have like this monthly ritual of shut everything down, disconnect everything, bring the case out to the garage, and blow everything out of the thing and clean it out real good and bring it back in, and then temperature would drop like crazy. Well, right. I've had this thing sitting here running for about 4 months now, and the extent of dust on the thing is like just very minimal bit of dust.
Yeah, but you're kind of ADD. I bet you vacuum like every 2 hours.
No, actually, I haven't touched this case in literally since I like moved into this place. So that was like 4 months back. So, yeah, the higher you can get it, the better. You can't really tell just by looking around in your house.
Suspend it from the ceiling.
What a feeling! You can get away with
it. That's a huge help because it looks like he's already got everything else covered. He's got the positive pressure. He's got, I'm guessing, throttled fans, so he's probably not running the airflow too high. And not only that, but he's got filtered intakes and everything else. So I'm guessing that thing's just getting caked up just from being low to the floor, most likely.
Oh, he forgot to mention that he's living right next door to a cement plant.
With the windows open all day, no AC.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, that's going to do it for emails. Podcast@pcper.com is the email address. 1-888-38-PCPer is the phone number. Real quick, I want to note, if you search Google for Computer Hardware Podcast, you know who's on top of that list, guys? No, not
This
them.
guy.
Tech Report?
Nope.
This guy
PC
and that
Perspective.
guy.
PC
Hot hardware.
Perspective. No, listen to me. PC Perspective. All right. Hardware and software picks of the week. Let's see. I'm going to pick it, even though it's a little bit cheating because I literally just looked it up like 2 hours ago, and I might be a little bit late to the game here. But in the first 2 hours of playing with the Sonos music system configuration, been very, very impressed. It is a somewhat pricey, but very easy to set up, very intuitive, very fluid, very dynamic, whatever nice terms I can use so far, audio streaming system that allows you to simultaneously run audio to all different rooms in your house through wireless connectivity. It's all in sync. It all shares the same libraries. You can listen to music on any computer in the network through this way. It's all controlled through your phone. There are native iPhone, iPad apps, or you can use a desktop computer to control it as well. There's also one for the Android. It's a third-party app, but it works. It works well. And it just does really cool stuff, like from the iPad or from anything, you can adjust the volume in another room remotely. And when you do, that change happens immediately on every other system. If you have multiple audio devices for multiple rooms, you can group them together so everything upstairs can play one song, everything downstairs can play a different radio station, or it works with Last.fm, it works with Pandora, it works with iHeartRadio and Napster. You can group it all so they're all playing, and it's in sync. So we had speakers in one room wirelessly connected and speakers in the other room wirelessly connected, pointed at each other, and they were in perfect sync, which is very, very cool. It is expensive. It's a little pricey. I'm going to do some more playing around with it. We're going to take it home and configure it correctly. We were just kind of playing around in the office. But so far, if you're looking for a streaming audio service, I know that there's AirPlay, which is new. That doesn't seem to have the same flexibility as what this might offer. But they're both going to be expensive. But check those out. Sonos, I'm sure most of you have already heard of it. And like I said, I think I'm late to the game here. But I think I was just waiting for the software to be right. So that's what I got. And I already mentioned the Lenovo FAIL, where I order one laptop and they ship me like a completely different one. So that's pretty awesome. Jeremy, what do you got?
Well, I've been snooping around newegg.com and newegg.ca trying to find a few good deals, and I found two. One for you Americans, the Linksys WRT54G2 wireless router, and as the WRT in it implies, it is one you can play with for $37. Or the Canadians actually get a HighPoint RocketRAID 2680 for $100 off at $179, which, if you're looking to set up a RAID, this is not a bad choice at that price, really. That's what I found.
Right. Hey, is that really one that you can play with? Like firmware-wise? Because I
you can twiddle the antennas as much as you like.
Yeah. No, I double-checked, and it is on the database at DDRWRT, yeah.
Sweet. I might get one.
All right. Look at that. You've already got one sold. Josh, what's your pick?
You know what? I hate to be so absolutely unoriginal, but the HD 6950 is a tremendous bargain at $299 if you can still get them. They're fast, they're next generation, they got everything you need. It's better than blow off a hooker's. Never mind. Spend for $299. And you can use it a lot longer than that 15 minutes.
I think you meant 6950.
6950, sure.
Because 6850 shouldn't be $299 or you're doing it wrong.
No, 6950. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
Wait,
all right, Allyn.
6950?
6950 is $299.
It was that big article that we did earlier.
While you were gone.
He missed it.
I don't think
he
we
was
were around.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I wasn't around.
He was off taking choice 1.
Boring. Anyway, do you have a hardware pick for us or software pick?
I have a software pick. It's a couple of very annoying, addicting games that are guaranteed to suck up everyone's. They're going to curse me after.
Awesome. I need lots more of those.
Well, yeah, I guess we do. One's iPhone. It's that cut the rope game, like everyone in their playing. This little freaking thing is addictive as heck. I think they have a trial for it, but it's just something that you need to try. It's like one of the more refreshing puzzle type games for iPhone that I've seen in a while.
Nah, don't do it if you like your job and stuff.
Yeah. If you actually have some things to do with your time, don't do it.
Alan has things to do.
Speaking of addicting things, just a heads up for everybody, Bejeweled 3 came out like a week ago, I think. And that's also equally sucking up everyone's time in the house.
And the good news is, thanks to the multitasking capability on the iPad and iPhone 4, you can listen to our podcast and play these dumb games at the same time.
That is true. You can. But yeah, Bejeweled 3 was actually kind of cool too. There's like some... you wouldn't think that this silly game where you have to match 3 gems in a row, like that concept could actually go this far, but
yeah,
they put a new spin on a lot of the things. I was completely expecting it to be just like lame, but it was actually kind of cool. Like they have like this poker thing where you have to like make your hand out of which color match you do, right? So if you want to make like 2 pair, you have to get 2 pair of like each, 3 in a row color, that sort of thing. It was pretty cool. They made it challenging. Anyway,
my addiction was I can't remember the name of this game.
Cosmos?
No. This was I called it the unicorn infested pinball game. They came out with lots of different iterations of it. You shoot the ball and the goal. It's like Plinko type thing. But your goal is to never mind. It doesn't matter. Don't ever do it because.
Can we move forward because this is just getting embarrassing for you, Ryan?
Unicorn infested, not corn infested. Chat room. Unicorn.
Unicorn infested.
There was a
the
unicorn
corn infested one.
It was a unicorn character. Look, it doesn't matter. Again, podcast at pcper.com, 1-888-38 pcper. pcper.com/podcast or twitter.com/pcper, facebook.com/pcper. If any of those URLs mean anything to you, you should go to them and subscribe or follow or update or email.
And send Ryan copies of Peggle.
Even if they
or maybe just PayPal them all your life savings.
Thank you.
Even if they don't mean anything to you, just go there anyway.
Yes, Peggle is the game. Peggle is the game that is just like all those other crap games. That
Unicorns and rainbows in a board meeting.
It is. It actually has both unicorns and rainbows.
Wait a minute. Is that what Ryan was going for? Were you actually talking about Peggle?
I was.
Oh,
it's not what I brought out of Peggle, but I can see why that's what he remembered.
It's got unicorns, and it's like pinball / Plinko, right? I mean, that's a pretty fair description of the game, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Unicorn infested.
Unicorn infested.
So that's going to do it for this week. If you want to watch us record this live for whatever reason, we do it every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, thereabouts, at live.twit.tv, or usually if you go to pcper.com, you can see a link to that. Or you can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Ryan Shrout, and I will inform you of when we are going to record the podcast. Holidays are coming up. We should have at least one more podcast before Christmas. And we'll have all kinds of stuff going on as we build up to CES. We will be at CES in force. There will be 7 people that work for me for the site going to CES, and I'm going to admit here that I'm very frightened about it. Which should be a lot of fun.
Just because we're all sharing one bed in a hotel room, come on, nothing to be afraid of.
But the good news is it's one of those big beds.
KY.
It's one of those big beds that rotates as well. It turns. It's on a motor, so I don't know.
We'll just put the bed on the side and just use the floor.
It has to have a coin slot.
So look forward to fantastic coverage from CES. As as people huddle in corners after the second day. So we will be there. We're going to do a Twitch. We're going to try to do a PC perspective from the show as well. We've got to figure out a whole lot of scheduling. But that's it for this episode.
We all use the same broadband connection.
Right. And we all sit in the same room and try not to echo off each other's microphones. So that's it. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hostrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Al Malventano, who will be sleeping in the closet.
You've always been in the closet.
Out of the closet.
Set up. Easy. Done. Good night, everybody.